What's going on, everybody? Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and whatever time it is. Welcome back to yet another video with you, man. I'm Holic, and welcome to episode 3 of my Abbasid Caliphate campaign for the 1212 AD Medieval Kingdoms mod for Total War Attila. Ladies and gentlemen, today we continue our conquest of the Zengid Attila to the north. The Zengids have a massive army. Oh, well, they did have a massive army that just attacked the city of Erbil, which houses our Caliphate Muhammad, or our Caliph Muhammad, I should say. So we will chase down the remnants at the beginning of this episode, but we'll just auto-resolve them away, since they were only just recently defeated. They have no morale, no numbers, and are surrounded, so we wipe them out. And this is the only Zengid army that we know of, so this is actually quite encouraging for us, despite our situation not being perfect. Our forces are somewhat depleted. The city of Erbil has diseases, as do many of our cities throughout this whole campaign. We had a lot of diseases. But after a couple turns of recuperating with the population being encouraged to enlist in our army, we now are going to march east and take out the city of Hamadan. It's the easternmost city that the Zengids have control over, and it's really a major city because it's basically a massive stepping stone on the way into the Far East. So we'll take the city of Hamadan, and we'll have a good barrier against the Khwarezmians to the east. In the meantime, General Ali is being sent to Erbil with a small infantry detachment, and he'll be recruiting more troops to try and support the main army as they turn back west after taking Hamadan. Hamadan has a relatively small garrison, so this will be another battle that I won't be bothering showing you guys. We have a lot of sieges in this campaign, where a lot of them don't have many garrison troops, so we won't be bothering fighting a lot of them. Here, though, the Zagwe Kingdom, the Ethiopians who have been declaring war on us, we actually do manage to get peace with them. Caliph Muhammad understands the benefits of peace, especially with these Ethiopian raiders who keep harassing us, so we will try to keep peace with them. We do not need any invasions coming up into Arabia from the south. But the Caliph leads another successful siege, takes the city of Hamadan after only just a few months. He has to assault the city, though. Fortunately, we can't make them surrender. That'd be really cool. Shout out to Empire Total War for letting you do that. But anyway, the governor of the city of Hamadan is killed alongside of his garrison, but the rest of the city is spared, and the city is peacefully occupied, as peacefully as possible, of course. But that's it for the east. We have the Khwarezmians now on our border, and they have client states all around us, but we don't really want to fight them. We want to leave them alive because they could deal with the Mongols who are coming from the east. The loss of Hamadan was big to the Zengids, and they now come cowering, desperately seeking peace, but we're not going to take it whatsoever. The Zengids have been a long time thorn on the Abbasid Caliphate's side, and they hold cities that absolutely belong to the Abbasids, so we will reject their peace offer. Nothing short of full annexation will be acceptable, although we will get peace with the Akkongulu. I hope I pronounced that right. Their confederacy to the north. They are allies of the Zengids, but they're also out of our way, and we don't really care to take their territory, so we'll get peace with them. And so that means that we'll just have the one enemy, which will be the Zengids. After the city of Hamadan's taken, we remove our garrison from Erbil, move it to Hamadan, and now Caliph Muhammad is marching back west towards the city of Mosul, which is the current capital of the Zengids. There's also some Ayyubid pretenders just outside the city. The Ayyubids have a bit of a civil war going on. Not a big deal, though. This is another city that we won't really bother showing. Another city siege, I should say. We did siege the city for quite a few turns just to make sure that we had enough siege equipment. But once you get like just a few pieces of siege equipment in this game, the auto resolve just flies up if the garrison's still quite small, which it is for a lot of these eastern cities. As we get further west and we start fighting the Crusaders, the garrisons get very, very large very quickly, and they're very powerful. The western units are far better than the eastern in most categories. So at least early on in the campaign they are. So we end up auto-resolving away the capital of the Zengids, and they now have one last city to the west. But we do take some casualties in that auto-resolve, especially with our axemen. Peacefully occupy the city, of course. We are the uniters of Islam, not the subjugators, so we will peacefully occupy basically anywhere we can. We'll repair the city and then go about installing Abbasid administration. But in the meantime, though, the army must continue marching. The city of Aleppo, the jewel of Syria, is waiting for us to the west. And so now Caliph Muhammad is leading our massive army against the final remnants of the Zengid dynasty. The Zengids are basically all done by this point. They don't even have a governor in the city, and they don't have any armies outside. Unfortunately, the AI isn't too great at recruiting armies in this mod for whatever reason. I am playing this on hard difficulty though, but yeah, early on, at least in this campaign, I noticed that a lot of the AIs wouldn't recruit too many armies, or if they did, if you wiped it out, that was kind of it. They wouldn't recruit anymore for quite a while. I won't show you guys the whole battle, but I will show you guys some highlights. So here we have our catapults. These are brand new units that we've recruited into our main Caliphate army. And they will be bombarding the city, of course, with a mixture of flaming shot and just regular stone shot. They'll be dealing massive morale damage to the pretty petty low-tier garrison defenders, and they'll also be doing damage to the buildings themselves by basically knocking down walls, letting our archers get even easier shots by doing so, and destroying the enemy cover. And our men can quite literally walk into the city now that we've destroyed their walls. And once we did that, we marched in with our cavalry, chased down the enemy skirmishers before they could do too much damage, although they were still very effective. And combining our light cavalry, which was lightning fast, chasing the enemy skirmishers all up and down the streets, we then also had our medium tier infantry following behind. Just ignoring all of this Zoroastrian architecture. There actually is a very cool submod that does overhaul that, but I didn't know that at the time of this recording, so it is what it is. But here is the last holdouts of the captain of the garrison trying to hold out against our troops, and we get him with a triple Abbasid sandwich. We have axemen behind, spearmen in front, and then our cavalry from the side. And the garrison of the city of Aleppo is wiped out basically in that last final charge. Aleppo fell very easily. We only took some casualties amongst our spearmen mainly, but again, we will peacefully occupy the city. We won't subjugate the Zengids, it's not worth it right now, although we will do some experimenting with subjugating factions in the future as we continue getting more factions under our thumb. But now that we have the city of Aleppo, that's really big for a couple of reasons. One, the city itself is quite valuable, has good resources, has glassware, has a decent amount of population. It's not massive, but it's decent. It will help us continue expanding our armies. But also in the west, we now actually have line of sight on what's going on in the Holy Land. And one thing that we could see is that the Muslim factions out here are not doing very well. The Kingdom of Antioch has taken massive swaths of territory from the Ayyubid Sultanate. The Ayyubid pretenders, at least pretenders to be the leaders of Islam, are failing miserably in Syria and the countries nearby. So all of these cities I'm highlighting here are held by the Crusader state known as the Kingdom of Antioch. So obviously this cannot stand, and so instead of going east and trying to take on the Mongols right now, we're going to consolidate our position in the center of the Middle East and start expanding to the west. So we'll begin by raising a brand new army at the city of Al-Jaf. This is our basically border city. It's in the middle of the desert between Mesopotamia and Syria, Palestine, in that area. So we'll be trying to recruit a cavalry-focused army that will be ready to march out of the desert when needed. But while that's happening, Caliph Muhammad is not sitting around and waiting on his hands. Instead, he's marching towards the city of Antioch. We haven't declared war yet against them. Instead, what we'll be doing for a few turns is raiding their territory. This will help our income greatly, and it will also perhaps provoke the Kingdom of Antioch to make a move that they're not ready to make. We haven't seen any of their armies yet, so we have to assume that they don't have too many, but we can't assume too much, of course. In the meantime, the Zagwe Kingdom is still being very frustrating. They actually redeclared war on us again. I think this is for this third time now that they've declared war on us. These people, they just absolutely hate us and they're nowhere near us, so it's very frustrating. But once again, Caliph Muhammad being the very wise ruler that he is, seeks peace with the Ethiopians, and so he will try and get it. And we do get it for a little bit, but we'll see how long that lasts. In the meantime, though, the Ayyubids have actually won the crusade that was launched against them. The fifth crusade was designed to take the city of Cairo. The Christians failed, and thus the Ayyubids actually held on to it. So congratulations to them. But yeah, it's not necessarily bad or good news for us. At least they're all distracted down there while our forces are busy actually making progress. But we have an all-cavalry army coming from Mesopotamia, and this is led by General Hakam. We have another army which is being recruited at the city of Al-Jawf itself, which will basically be just a very small infantry contingent, which will be focused on defending the city of Al-Jawf. And so we'll have that, and then the cavalry army will be marching out of the desert into southern Syria very soon. But we're trying to basically do a two-pronged attack against the kingdom of Antioch. I'm not sure what we should call them, Antiochians or Antiochis. If any of you know who are watching, feel free to let me know. But in the meantime, what we do have is massive issues with our government. The Abbasid dynasty does not have the prestige that it used to, and it doesn't have the power over its subjects that it used to. So many of our generals and governors are becoming disloyal quite quickly, and we also just generally have very low support across the board. So because of this, we're seeing low loyalty rates, we're seeing lower public order and lower income. Overall, our government is not very stable, but we'll look into that more as the video continues and more episodes come out. In the meantime, though, the kingdom of Antioch needs to be put to the sword. They are allied with the kingdom of Jerusalem, but they are unreliable, so it's unlikely that they'll help the kingdom of Antioch. And even if they did, we were prepared because we had a all-cavalry army in the city of Al-Jawf in the province of Shamar. You can see it right there, just to the top right of the war declared box there. But anyway, the kingdom of Jerusalem does not back up the kingdom of Antioch, and instead we actually get a direct siege happening on Antioch within the first turn. There is no army nearby to stop us, at least none that we can see. They do have a pretty solid governor, though. The governor is the heir of the king of Antioch, and they have a large garrison itself, so that's a little concerning. In the meantime, our all-cavalry army, led by General Hakam, is marching down into Palestine right now. There is a Kingdom of Antioch army right outside the city of Jerusalem. It's not massive, but it is a bit of a threat. It's quite skirmisher heavy, and they have a lot of cavalry. So even though we have good cavalry, it is a little concerning. So we're not looking necessarily to rush into fighting them. We need to scout out more of the Holy Land and see what else is going on. The king of Antioch himself is actually leading a massive infantry-based army in conjunction with that cavalry and skirmisher army. And they're trying to chase down our all-cav army. This is very concerning for us. The enemy has a lot of archers which are deadly against our lightly armored cavalry. So we're going to fall back around the city of Damascus and use the city itself basically as a barrier to hide ourselves from these two armies, which when combined are quite massive and are definitely going to be too much of a match for our army, at least for our all-cavalry army on its own. So we will be falling back towards the desert, but not all the way, and we'll also be using the ambush stance to try and hide our all-cavalry army. Once again, led by General Hakam down here. He will be going to ambush, but while he does that, Caliph Muhammad is still leading the siege on the city of Antioch. It's been a couple turns, so we do have some siege equipment. Not a lot, but we also have 2 sets of catapults. So now it is time for us to put them to use in the siege of Antioch. Here we are, ladies and gentlemen. There is Caliph Muhammad looking extremely proud and fierce. Absolutely piercing eyes. I love it. Here is his army in front of him. His heavy cavalry right in front, basically acting as personal bodyguards. The catapults begin opening up on the city walls, combined with our archers using their extended shot. They won't get a lot of kills, but they will deal a lot of HP damage over time, and they will basically annoy the crap out of the defenders, who will be under a constant barrage throughout this entire time. And you'll see a few hits here and there, a few little splatters of blood occurring. But the main thing that we need to do is buy time for our catapults to do this massive damage to the enemy walls. The garrison will try to move out of the way, but look at these arrows just flying in. There's hundreds of them coming in all at once, darkening the skies quite literally. Combined with fireballs falling out into the enemy garrison, they are terrified and they have no idea what to do. Their crossbowmen are petrified and also out of range of our troops, thankfully. The bombardment continues, but not too much longer after that, we actually begin getting openings in the walls. We don't get a lot of openings, unfortunately, but just a couple is all we need. So we'll begin by marching forward with our infantry. We currently have our spearmen in the front, axemen behind, and then swordsmen behind them. But as we get closer, we will swap that army composition and let our swordsmen lead the charge. That's our one-handed swordsmen who are using a shield and medium tier armor. They're moving through the back lines right now, so we're going to be swapping forward, trying to let our spearmen take the brunt of the skirmisher fire. But here comes our swordsman right now. Absolutely gorgeous uniforms, looking incredible. The shimmering of the helmets looks very nice with that reshade. I really like it, at least. I hope you guys do as well. I am using my own reshade for this playthrough though. We have our horse archers firing over the tops of the suburbs of the city just outside the walls, providing cover fire to our infantry. The enemy infantry is returning fire with their crossbows and archers now, so that's a little concerning. We need to hurry up and engage them. And we're also switching to flaming shot with many of our archers to cause even more morale damage, terrify the enemy, and possibly even cause burning throughout the city, which we're okay with right now. This is the city of Antioch, so it is quite valuable, but at the same time, if we gotta burn it down, we gotta let it burn. Our generous way of taking cities is now over, now that we're taking on such powerful enemies such as the Kingdom of Antioch and the Crusader states. The crossbows combined with spearmen do hold our troops at the walls for a while, but it does not last too long. Our skirmisher fire combined with reinforcements coming in is enough to drive the enemy defenders back, and they will retreat further into the city alongside the rest of their garrison comrades. We basically have one large breach in the wall here, and then we're also charging up the main gate. So this contingent that's trying to slide around the flank of the enemy right here, you can see along this red line, they will flank around and actually help our men who are stuck at the main gate. But the enemy does have a lot of crossbows and archers that are getting some pretty easy kills right now. So hopefully we can get our cavalry in soon to come chase them down. Here's some more live action footage with the UI turned on. You can see our axemen have actually chased down more of their infantry further down their main street. And while that's happening, we're finally pushing through the main gate right now, and we're stopping the enemy infantry from holding us there. So that's going really, really well. Our cavalry now continues marching in. We're sending them down the side streets to flank around to the east. In the meantime, while our troops begin marching north up the main street, they are getting blocked though, so our cavalry does need to kind of hurry up, get behind the enemy positions, and try to outflank their skirmishers. But it's going to take a little while. The enemy does have barricades, so that might take some time. Here is Caliph Muhammad himself, now leading into the attack into the city, alongside his personal bodyguard with some heavily armored cavalry that he has at his disposal. In the meantime, troops behind him go to secure the gate and allow more of our men to flood into the city. Here is the general, or the governor of the city of Antioch. He's wearing the dark red and dark gray and black. Oh no, it's more of a blue almost color. He has a very impressive personal bodyguard retinue, basically like Teutonic Knight level kind of skill here. These guys are incredibly skilled, very heavily armored, so they are lasting quite a long time against our lightly armored cavalry. But we have a swarm of infantry coming in to help out as well, and shortly after that the governor's bodyguard does end up routing, and as the governor himself is running off there, you can see him running with his standard. The Abbasid flag now flies over the city of Antioch. We win the siege. And there we have a decisive victory. We lost 663 men though. That is quite savage. It's definitely going to hurt us a little bit. We're going to need a few turns to recover, but I'm sure the people of Antioch can be persuaded to help fill the holes in our ranks. The literal holes in our ranks too, that is. That siege was definitely harsh, but we needed to hurry up and do it, because if we didn't, then we risked the Antioch armies coming at us from the south. And even though they aren't all that massive, the two armies combined together do pose a very serious threat to our forces. So now Caliph Muhammad will garrison the city of Antioch. He will peacefully occupy it after killing the garrison, of course. They did refuse to surrender after all. It's going to take some time for us to repair the buildings in Antioch, but we will try to. But we now finally actually have a port into the Mediterranean. Although, in saying that, unfortunately, the 1212 AD mod does not actually have navies yet. Instead, you can basically put your army on transports, and that's how you can go across the sea. So a little bit of a shame that it's not implemented yet, but it's just a matter of time. Here we have the Kingdom of Antioch. They are basically holding their position with their two armies, perhaps thinking that our all-cavalry army is about to come in and hit them from the south, which we would like them to, especially considering they're quite mutinous. Our armies are really struggling with their integrity. That's one thing that I also noticed with this mod, is that it feels like no matter what faction you play, but especially the eastern factions, you got to deal with really serious mutinies potentially happening. In the meantime, though, as turns pass, the Kingdom of Antioch does start sending its armies towards Baghdad, which is actually very scary. I just highlighted some areas there showing you where we believe their armies are, but we can only see one at this time. So they have a few potential targets that they can go to. Of course, the most serious one and the most worrying for us is for them to march towards Baghdad. They're just charging straight on through the desert. So with that green line, you can see we have our all-cavalry army to the northeast of Al-Jawf. They can follow the roads to the west or to the northeast to basically go and defend in the northeast, or to march west and launch a counterattack against the Kingdom of Antioch. But again, the army is very mutinous, so we're having to be very careful about how we handle this. In the meantime, the King of Antioch is now leading his army back towards the city of Antioch in order to retake it. Caliph Muhammad is trying to defend and hold his position. The Antioch forces do have quite a lot of skirmishes, so again, it's very worrying for our infantry as well. They'll get a lot of kills on our men if we allow them to. So that's going to be very concerning, although thankfully, the enemy's skirmisher and cavalry-focused army over here has begun marching towards Mosul and Aleppo. And while those are cities that we can't afford to lose, it does seem like they're not marching towards Baghdad, and our all-cavalry army can chase them down and hunt them down. At least that's the plan. We will go into a forced march to do so, and we'll catch up with them within a turn or two. There was quite a bit of cat and mouse happening, and General Hakam had to deal with several near mutinous, basically, uprisings in his army. Again, why this is happening, it's anybody's guess, really. I mean, nothing bad has actually happened to the army, but what he's had to do is basically order executions of these leaders who are trying to organize these mutinies against General Hakam, which is very disappointing that the troops of the Caliphate are not as loyal as they should be. In the meantime, we're sending spies to the north to find out if the Kingdom of Antioch has any other armies coming in. Doesn't seem like they do, but we can never be too sure. Again, this is the fourth time or something now that the Zagwe Kingdom has declared war on us. This down here is where we believe their city is, the area I just highlighted. We're not sure if they have another city to the north or who controls that, but basically we know where they are, and they keep declaring war on us for whatever reason, so we're getting sick of it, and we will have to go and deal with that one way or another. Our all-cavalry army is supported by General Jamil, with an infantry contingent right now who's still chasing down these Crusader skirmisher forces. They're basically raiding our territory northwest of Baghdad, which is unacceptable. We do need to chase them down, especially in case they turn towards the city of Baghdad itself and try to threaten a very powerful population. We have a lot of people living there. We must defend them at all costs. If we lose Baghdad, then this whole campaign is absolutely in jeopardy. But the Kingdom of Antioch realizes this, and they begin falling back towards Syria with their cavalry and skirmishers. We will try to intercept them, but it's going to take a while. But our cavalry army is marching towards Homs inside the territory of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, but we're ignoring them and their claims of autonomy. As far as we're concerned, They're just nothing but more Crusaders who are here to invade our own lands. Although our full cavalry army is now surrounded by Antiochian forces, so that's a little concerning. And so to try and offset that, we do need to have Caliph Muhammad march out a little bit prematurely and take on the king of Antioch himself. So now we have the king of the Crusaders taking on the Caliph of Islam. Here we are on the battlefield, ladies and gentlemen. We have our swordsmen in the center, followed up by spearmen in the second line. Then on the center rear, we have our catapults, 2 contingents of them alongside the Caliph himself. On the far left-hand side, we have axemen leading the front. They are quite depleted though, so it's a little bit concerning to do that, but it's just what we're doing for now. We have archers behind them, and then we have our light and medium cavalry in the far rear on the left. On the far right hand flank, we have very similar kind of composition but lower numbers. So we have a full contingent of axemen right there, but only 1 contingent, some more archers, and then only 1 unit of cavalry, which is actually a light horse archer. So our army composition is pretty standard. The enemy, however, is focusing all of their infantry and cavalry in the center. In the meantime, on the left and right flank, it's composed of entirely skirmishers. This is a really unorthodox army. Here's a nice close-up for you all to see their troops. But the camera work for this battle is going to be a little different because I wanted to show you guys a live recording of this battle. So instead of seeing all of like cinematic shots and all things like that, I wanted to show you guys how the battle looks while I'm actually commanding it and playing on my own. So you'll be seeing a lot of frantic footage very soon, but in the meantime you see both of our armies marching towards each other with my men in the shield wall already. But as the Crusaders get close to us, they actually spread out and send their cavalry down to our left-hand flank just as they start taking fire from our catapults. We respond by sending in a very strong charge against their own cavalry. They will win the charge, unfortunately, but we do have Caliph Muhammad coming around to help out our own troops, and we also have skirmishers nearby. So as time goes on, we will win that battle, but our light cavalry is going to take some casualties for sure. In the meantime, the massive amount of skirmishers are dealing very large amounts of damage to our troops, even though they're in a shield wall. So we're going to have to actually push forward across lots of open ground and try and chase down these skirmishers before they can do too much damage. The center is looking okay though. They have their swordsmen and cavalry charging against our own spearmen and swordsmen, so we're okay there. Caliph Muhammad over here is leading the charge against the enemy cav on our left-hand flank. The enemy cavalry is just refusing to rout though, like far out. It's quite surprising. They really took a very long time. We almost had to wipe out one of their units entirely, so that's interesting. I'm still trying to understand the balance of this mod, of course, but anyway. In the meantime, we have our infantry spread out, and they're basically being picked apart because they're being separated from the main contingent of our army, which is definitely not ideal, but we also can't just stand back there and take the fire that these massive amounts of skirmishers were dealing against us. So the king of Antioch is engaged with our axemen. Hopefully we can get our caliph involved and hurry up and surround them. He does have 1 other contingent of cavalry available still though, and they just run through our swordsmen like they're not even there in existence. The enemy cavalry is very heavily armed and very well trained, so we'll have to keep that in mind as we continue fighting more Crusader states as time goes forward. The king of Antioch in the background over there has hit our archers. In the meantime, our infantry and cavalry are chasing down their skirmishers still, but they're doing quite well actually in spreading out their formation and hitting us from multiple directions. However, the king of Antioch himself has become separated from the main contingent of his army. He's engaging our skirmishers, which was a smart choice. However, his spearmen are all the way over here, stuck in our main line. Although, speaking of smart choices, I do not make one where I accidentally misclicked and sent my catapults walking through the main front line. But that's okay, they will survive. It's not a big deal, but it could have been if I screwed it up more. Here, though, Caliph Muhammad is leading the charge against the enemy king, and he actually kills him himself. In hand-to-hand combat, our Caliph took on the Crusader king and killed him, combined with some skirmisher help, of course. But we were trying to protect our skirmishers since the king actually charged them and was trying to chase them down. So Now with the king of Antioch dead, the enemy army is definitely going to start wavering. And with just a few more charges, a few more surrounding charges as well, where we have our cavalry doing beautiful sandwich charges, just like the good old days of Parthia. Who remembers those Parthian sandwiches, people? We get a victory, and the kingdom of Antioch is defeated, and their king is dead. There he is, dying on the campaign map. The Caliph knocks him out of the way, slaughters his entire army, and will end up taking on all the warriors. And so by this point, the kingdom of Antioch is essentially defeated. They have that light skirmisher army that's just entered back into Syria, but it doesn't pose a threat to any of our armies. And even then, if it attacked one of our cities, its army composition is not very well built for dealing with our walled cities. However, we still have mutinies potentially occurring, even amongst the Caliph's army. It's very, very concerning. The kingdom of Antioch, though, does come crawling to us begging for peace. We will allow it if they pay a hefty indemnity, as they should, for the expenses that they've caused on us from this war. We'll try to make them a vassal. They're not interested, unfortunately. So instead, we will let them keep their independence for now. But in the meantime, we do take the city of Antioch. We killed their king, so their realm was overall very unstable, and they're now basically in exile living in Cappadocia. But getting back to our political situation, the Abbasid dynasty is losing all of its power very, very quickly. Many of our generals and governors are setting themselves up in high offices. We even have others taking the title of Amir, even Qadi, Mutasib. We have a lot of different offices that are being basically occupied by these men who are very ambitious and wish to lead the caliphate themselves. They think that they are somehow more wise and more worthy than the Caliph Muhammad himself. But in the meantime, though, we are making plans to launch attacks from the city of Aleppo to the north, potentially. But Aleppo is more of a defensive city right now. In the southeast here, down at Basra, we do have, of course, diseases running rampant, unfortunately. It's basically out of our control now. But General Hakam is leading his all-cavalry army down to the southeast. And he's doing that because now it is time for us to organize an expedition into Africa. That's right. The Abbasid Caliphate is essentially going on safari in Africa. Not really, but we are launching an invasion. We will march down to the city of Bahla, and they will follow the coast down here all the way around the Arabian Peninsula, and we will launch a direct invasion into the heartland of the Ethiopians and hopefully deal with them once and for all, because their constant slander and declarations of war against the Abbasids cannot go unpunished. But anyway, we have a very unstable realm, but we have a large realm and a strong military. Things are looking very, very iffy and up in the air at the moment. So that's where we'll end it for now, though. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I shall see you in the next one.